Welcome to the FinTalks, a chat with Finance Malta. Today we have with us Luciano Brincat, Deputy Head, Fintech and Innovation at the MFSA. Good morning, Luciano. Can you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Good morning, listeners. I'd like to thank Finance Malta for hosting this podcast. It's our pleasure to be contributing towards this discussion. With regards to who I am, I'm obviously Luciano. I work within the Fintech supervision function of the MFSA. It's a function specifically dealing on Fintech and digital finance. Obviously, we're not alone. We're part of the organization, and we try to bridge the gap, as I'll be explaining later, between the traditional space and the financial services sector of tomorrow.
Brilliant, thank you. So in September 2020, the EU issued the Digital Finance Package. What is this and how will it impact the landscape of financial services going forward?
Interesting question. Basically, in 2020, as rightly mentioned, in September, the European Commission launched its Digital Finance Package. This package consists of four main pillars, which will definitely impact the financial services landscape of the EU and obviously Malta. The main pillars are digital finance strategy, which seeks to remove the fragmentation within the single market. There is also the facilitation of digital innovation within the EU, and ultimately it seeks to enhance the digital transformation within the single market. The second pillar relates to the markets in crypto assets framework, which basically deals in crypto assets falling outside traditional financial services legislation. It also discusses stable coins, and current discussions at the level of the Commission and Parliament Council relate to non-fungible tokens and the inclusion of DeFi, but this is still something which is being discussed in trialogues.
Okay.
There is also within this second pillar the DLT markets infrastructure pilot regime. Basically, this regime caters for market infrastructures which are utilizing distributed ledger technology within their solution. The third pillar relates to digital operation and resilience. This framework seeks to create a regulation for digital operation resilience within the EU, so that our financial service providers have the necessary controls in place to mitigate any ICT and cybersecurity risks, and it also seeks to regulate third-party service providers. Last but not least, there's retail payment strategy, which seeks to make payments within the EU more efficient, more instant, and also more comprehensive in terms of open banking.
Okay. What is the MFSA doing in terms of digital finance and technology?
Sure. So basically, way back in 2020, we had provided our feedback to the consultation procedure issued by the Commission on the Digital Finance Package. Obviously, this is a very important package for the MFSA, so therefore internally we are coordinating so that all the different arms of the MFSA are aware of what's happening and how we can best position our feedback so that we can obviously drive and deliver this package. Our goal, when obviously considering the entire package, is to maximize the benefits of this package whilst taking into consideration the regulatory burden which would be imposed on the financial services sector, whilst taking into consideration the needs of the Maltese market. Obviously, we discuss the various proposals are discussed at various levels, both nationally and internationally. We attend a number of European forums, even within the European Supervisory Authority, such as the European Banking Authority, the European Securities and Markets Authority, and the European Insurance and Occupational Pensions Authority. And obviously, this package is very large in terms of footprint, and therefore we have to coordinate with other national competent authorities, such as the Central Bank of Malta, the Ministry for Finance, obviously government, obviously to shape the framework so that it obviously meets our goals.
And how can the MFSA prepare itself for regulating a new digital landscape?
Well, digital finance package is only part of it. as MFSA, we're looking at digital finance and fintech, so the emerging side of digital finance. In terms of digital finance, we're making sure that we're obviously observing how digital transformation is occurring within the financial services space. We're also looking at what is coming ahead so that we can effectively deal with it when we receive applications and when we encounter during our supervisory work. To achieve that, we're focusing on three main pillars. Obviously, of building supervisory capacity, and by capacity we have, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, I'm part of a new function called the Fintech Supervision Function, which has expertise in relation to emerging technologies such as AI and decentralized finance. We have also a new cybersecurity function. Well, it has been nearly a year old, but this function focuses on cybersecurity and ICT risks, and it's also focusing on the implementation of DORA as we speak. As a function, my function, the Fintech Supervision Function, we deal with obviously bridging the gap, as I mentioned earlier, between the traditional space and the emerging technologies, emerging financial services, so that the sectoral functions, which obviously conduct supervision on our financial services market, can understand the risks of such innovations and understand the regulatory gaps which may arise out of such innovations. Secondly, the second pillar relates to monitoring. And on monitoring, obviously, we have both passive monitoring, to obviously looking at the media, looking at what's happening abroad, discussing with our peers at the various fora, but a more active role towards monitoring is through the MFSA's Fintech sandbox, which I'll be discussing later on. And the sandbox allows us to view what's coming ahead. Additionally, we obviously have an innovation office internally which handles queries, handles information coming from the other arms of the MFSA, so that we can understand where the market is going and what's happening on the ground. The last pillar which I mentioned was regulation. So obviously we have supervisory capacity, we're looking at what's happening, and this translates into our main role and our main role there is to minimize the externalities arising from such innovation. So our aim is to, in terms of regulation, is to drive policy positions internally and in both internally and externally, so that there is legal certainty when it comes to such innovations. Obviously, this is not in silo, because we operate within a European framework, within a European community, and therefore we have to follow what is being said at an international level, and even by supranational powers such as standard setting bodies such as the IOSCO, OECD, and so on.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you mentioned the Fintech regulatory sandbox. Can you give more details on what this is and what the objectives are here?
Sure. So basically, the MFSA Fintech Sandbox, which was launched in 2020, in June of 2020, basically seeks to provide an environment for financial services providers and technology providers utilizing emerging technologies within their solution, and with as these solutions within this environment for a specific period of time and within a controlled space. This tool allows us to actively, so basically, just to recap a bit, the goal of this tool, the objective of this tool is to foster financial innovation, technology-enabled financial innovation, through legal certainty and knowledge sharing.
Okay.
And basically, this objective captures the objectives, obviously, the scope of the sandbox, which is basically that of allowing financial service providers and technology providers to test their solution within the financial services market, Obviously, this could be something which MFSA has never actually seen or actually supervised, so we can be more willing to test the solution within a live market. And however, these two other objectives which are essential towards the sandbox are that of providing legal certainty. So obviously, with any emerging technology, there are lots of uncertainties with respect to regulations. So legal certainty is important for the market to operate. And last but not least, the sandbox allows for the MFSA to understand how the solution is working, and obviously understand the risks and the implications in a live environment. At the same time, the provider is understanding our expectations, understanding our culture, understanding what we mean by certain terms in terms of regulation. And so potentially the provider will be more prepared to approach the authority and understand that ultimately regulation is not there to hinder but to support his service, and ultimately provide a wider service to the community and the finances and the economy, the Maltese economy.
Okay. And how does the MFSA sandbox compare to those being offered by other jurisdictions? Because we've seen a number of these regulatory sandboxes pop up.
Well, obviously, as our sandbox was launched in 2020, there were other jurisdictions had issued sandboxes before. In terms of where we stand, our sandbox is comparable to other sandboxes across the EU and even abroad. That said, we have a nascent sector locally, so it's still a startup locally. So potentially we have less of engagement than other jurisdictions such as the UK, such as Israel, such as Italy. So obviously our sandbox is in terms of engagement is lesser when compared to other jurisdictions. That said, we're learning a lot from it. We're part of a European initiative as well in terms of the European cross-border testing framework, which was one of the initiatives under the digital finance package. We were also part of the Global Financial Innovation Network, which has its own sandbox, but at this point in time, we're not part of that initiative. That said, we are currently looking at enhancing our sandbox on the basis of the lessons learned over the past 2 years, on the basis of discussing with the industry the needs of the sector, and trying to make the sandbox more approachable and more not easier, but more approachable in general for anyone wishing to participate within this framework. Hopefully, we would tend to launch this Sandbox 2.0, what we're calling, in the coming months. So hopefully we'll have more information then. However, hopefully with this new revision, we'll see more engagement in terms of participants.
Okay, very good. And how do you see the local fintech landscape developing? You said that it's still nascent, it's still in its infancy. As a regulator, how do you see this progressing?
Well, obviously, as a regulator, we look at it from the side. We look at it from the side in terms of we cannot actively meddle in terms of support, in terms of direct funding or what. But however, we can support it by providing legal certainty, provide robust frameworks which support it rather than de-incentivize. That said, our goal as a MFSA is to ultimately have sustainable growth within the financial services market. So in any project, in any framework that we're looking at, we always look at the wider context in terms of how does this framework support the sector, how does the framework ensure market integrity, financial soundness, and consumer and investor protection, whilst at the same time ensuring that innovation continues to occur, that the financial services sector continues to operate, because ultimately we have the sector is important in terms of our economy. It provides everyone within the economy has their own financial needs, and obviously these financial needs have to be met in some way or form through financial services. We have a number of challenges in terms of capacity, in terms of technology technology infrastructure locally. However, as MFSA, we're also contributing towards a Maltese strategy towards making the financial services sector more sustainable for the coming 10 years. And various challenges have been identified, and various measures have been identified also in order to mitigate these challenges.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time today, Luciano, and we look forward to further updates on how the MFSA is handling these changes in the fintech and technology world. You can find the recording of this podcast on the Finance Malta website, the Finance Malta YouTube channel, and all other social media platforms. Thank you.